Good evening, everyone, and thanks for watching. I'm Katie Moore.
And I'm Cherise Gibson. Tonight we begin with a new David Hammer investigation of the deadly collapse of the Hard Rock Hotel 1 year ago.
Late Monday, the owner of that failed project filed a lawsuit against 19 construction contractors, blaming them for the collapse.
Yeah, now David has emails and photos from just before that collapse that show how owner Mohan Kailas also got involved in some of the construction decisions.
The Hard Rock Hotel collapse killed 3 workers and injured dozens of others, leading to lawsuits by the workers and the city. Now, the hotel owners, 1031 Canal Development, and majority owner Mohan Kailas are joining in with a lawsuit on the anniversary of the collapse. Right after the collapse, we went to talk to Kailas, but he ran away when he saw us. Now his lawsuit is doing the talking for him, alleging the engineer of record on the project, Heaslip Engineering, should have known about the building's structural problems. The lawsuit also focuses on steelmaker Hub Steel, alleging, quote, steel beams on the 16th floor of the building were not strong enough to carry the required loads and were not connected to columns per the contract documents. It also alleges Hub Steel did not install the right metal decking where concrete was poured, claiming the, quote, inadequate decking system caused too much weight to be placed on the 16th floor of the building, which contributed to the collapse. Kailas's company also alleges the prime contractor, Citadel Builders, didn't inform it of these structural stability problems. Dozens of emails obtained by Eyewitness News show that Kailas did get involved in construction decisions, but none that appeared to deal with the building's structural integrity. In February 2019, for instance, a Citadel project manager writes about huge increases in costs with drywall, and a Kailas company employee responds, I need to get with Mr. Mohan first to see what he wants to keep and to remove. And in June, another Kailas employee tells the construction team, quote, until further notice, do not continue construction on the condo model unit, focus on the mock-up rooms. Still, other emails indicate that project managers were under pressure to finish the work in the final weeks before the collapse. In one email, a Citadel manager says, we don't have time for the engineering calculations. David Hammer, Eyewitness News.
Well, the contractors have not responded yet to the owner's lawsuit, but in previous lawsuits, they have all denied they had anything to do, or at the Hard Rock rather, contributed to the collapse.